So I chose this headline to try to talk about something I've seen happening in sort of the gaming circles, at least that I'm aware of, but I didn't quite know how to before this. Before I get to that, I want to apologize for talking quietly. I'm recording this very early in the morning. I was up last night working on a new live stream initiative. It's not mine. I'm just helping out with it. But, I will be promoting it. I was tweeting it. Starting new things is always tough, and I was out until after midnight, and so I just went to sleep and hope I'd, get up and do this in the morning. But people in this house are still sleeping right now, so I'm trying to be quiet. But this comment by Barack Obama about the rise of white nationalism, a crude sort of nationalism. We know what he's talking about. He's talking about, the alt-right and Trump and Bannon and all that stuff. His exact quote was, "I do believe, separate and apart from any particular election or movement, that we are going to have to guard against a rise in a crude sort of nationalism or ethnic identity or tribalism that is built around an us and a them." And I'm just going to come out and say this without fear of being branded a racist or any sort of reprisals that way, because I don't know how much more the regressive left can do to me, frankly. But this is a bizarre statement coming from the guy branded the first black president. Because if we weren't engaging in, a crude sort of ethnic identity, his signature achievement wouldn't be that he's the first black president. And that is a harsh thing to say. But the fact that his coalition of support absolutely collapsed this time around, despite his personal entreaties, that, he would take it as a personal insult if his voters didn't go out and vote for Hillary Clinton. Well, that was appealing to a crude tribalism. They didn't have to like her because they would continue his policies. Well, people didn't buy it. People were voting for the idea of him, not necessarily any of his policies, because they didn't really understand a lot of the things he did in office. I can't even claim to understand something like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There wasn't enough information about that. And there's this myth about the Obamas that they always take the high road and they, are divorced from drama, that sort of thing. And the reality is that's just not possible in the halls of power that they inhabit. This is a president who never met a drone strike he didn't like. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that is not the high road, And this is the issue. This is the tribalism of the left. This is the crude sort of nationalism that comes with an out of control progressive identity. And I don't want people to think that I'm saying the right is perfect or that I'm supporting the alt-right or anything like that. No. It can go without saying that the alt-right has done some really disgusting things, not just in general, but personally to me. What I want to examine here is the flaws within the progressive attitudes that allowed people who did not subscribe to those alt-right beliefs to ignore them, to elect somebody who, Trump is so nonsensical that he's got his daughter Ivanka and her husband who are Jewish, and then he goes and installs in one of his inner circle of advisors a guy who publishes anti-Semitic material. Like, this is not the mark of a consistent person, but or a particularly compassionate one, quite frankly. But people don't expect consistency or compassion anymore. Why? Because it's nowhere. The left likes to look down its nose at the right and call them a bunch of easy names that sound really bad. But if you look at the ranks of what's been branded the regressive left is the answer to the alt-right. Because if we look at both these groups, and hey, the regressive left could have come along first, I don't know. But if we look at both these groups, they have zero tolerance for any sort of plurality of attitude within their ranks. There is a thought police within each of them that they don't really acknowledge or accept. And they both destroy the reputations of anyone they decided has violated the moral limits that they have put on people. And the mistake, and I don't think it's even a mistake, because they did it deliberately. It wasn't, oh, we didn't intend to do this, but we did it anyway. It was, no, they intended to do this. The left, the regressive left, not progressives in general, not people who are out there actually, having to reach across the aisle and having to work and actually having to get things done. But this coterie of shamers, these progressive shamers, what all they did with their shame, 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 and their call-out culture and their so-called punching up and all this stuff is, and I've watched this, they have systematically convinced regular people that they cannot be good. When you go to somebody, you're a racist, and they claim to say, no, that's racist behavior. I didn't say you were a racist. I said your behavior was problematic. I witnessed this firsthand when a bunch of them decided I was transphobic because of a joke I told about my dog, which happened to be based on a true behavior. Thanks for canine shaming. Kidding. But they claimed, when I finally confronted one person about this and they stopped running, that they were not saying I was transphobic. They were saying that the behavior was transphobic, but that is absolutely not true. It may have started that way, but then they whipped themselves up in their message boards and they beat the drums and they sent the tweets, and the message went from that behavior bothered me to that behavior was inherently bad to you are inherently bad. And I kept saying to this person, explain to me why. Explain to me why telling a joke about my dog using a scratching post has anything to do with transgendered people. But even saying transgendered people is wrong. It's trans. And me saying transgendered, is a sign of my bigotry, according to them. It just shows I don't get it. And I say transgender because when I said trans, people went, what? What are you saying? It doesn't translate. Transgender is a word people understand. And just because they're not on the bleeding edge of cultural Marxist thought does not mean they should be left behind. But because I believe that, I have been left behind. I have been left behind by this group that sees themselves as a self-styled intellectual leaders of the modern age. And I have seen so many people accept that they are bad people because the regressive left tells them so, and embrace that they are bad people because the regressive left tells them so. That we should not be surprised that a guy like Steve Bannon, like a guy like Donald Trump, ended up in the White House. Because while the official slogan was, I'm with her, what was actually going on was that the minority, this regressive left minority, was sending the message to the majority of people, the mainstream, that you're not with us. You're far too backward for us, those of us who are pure of heart and don't believe in hate. Well, all these things are numbers games. Business is a numbers game. Politics is a numbers game. And what the regressive left in its intellectual elitism, false elitism, I'll have you know, did was they created a majority that wasn't in their favor. They created a majority who identified more with Trump and his sort of style of things because it was achievable. It was attainable. It was something they could relate to. And this was the missing piece. This is something I came to understand because I actually bothered to talk to people who have ideas different from my own, because I could not understand why, after that basket of deplorables comment, so many people I knew who are not hateful people identified with the more negative half of that basket of deplorables comment. And it finally clicked. They identify with the basket of deplorables because they were put in it by the regressive left. They were not identifying, they were not creating an identity for themselves based on what they actually believed. They were creating an identity for themselves based on what they were told they believed. And this is very important, because that crude sort of tribalism, I won't say nationalism because that's a specific thing, but tribalism is much more accurate. It's not rising Barack Obama, it's here. And it's not Obama's fault, but it is something he failed to understand. And I'm not sure why. He must have lived a very charmed life if he has not encountered in a meaningful way that very severe wave of tribalism that has been building at least for the last 2 years, but even beyond that. I mean, by 2012, it was hitting a really fevered pitch. I think this has actually been building since the economic, the crash and the Great Recession. And that happens in periods of economic insecurity. People want to look at race. People want to look at these cultural issues, but they're not looking at the economic fundamentals that tend to drive tribal thinking. Because when people start losing things, when people start losing financial things, economic things, stuff, right? They turn to what they have left, and what's left is their identity. They, the same way that the cinema of the 1980s tried to pull a moral victory out of the military loss of Vietnam. People who have lost their houses, people who have lost their jobs, people who are working more hours for less pay, people who spend every day afraid they're going to get fired, and then they don't know what they're going to do because there are no jobs to go to. When you don't have that economic security, you look for other ways to boost your feeling of self-worth. And that can be heritage, that can be a hobby, that it's some cultural group. And the thing that the alt-right did right, that the regressive left messed up, was that because of the way it functions, the alt-right is a surprisingly welcoming place. There's this double think within the alt-right of, you can be Jewish and participate in alt-right movements, provided you don't mind the anti-Semitic language that's said. You can be there. You can be black and be part of the alt-right if you don't mind the racist language. You can be gay and be part of the alt-right as long as you don't mind the homophobic slurs. You are welcome. Even though they do things you may not like, they do not throw you out. The regressive left, on the other hand, lives to ostracize people. And people may say at this point, and I'm getting to this, why join either group? Well, because they're big and they're loud and they offer a certain amount of protection on an internet where the companies that make up the structures of the internet have done an extremely lousy job of creating a good user experience to people. Places like Twitter, even places like YouTube, have left people at the mercy of the mobs. And the only rational thing for a lot of people to do is pick a mob and join it, because then at least you've got a certain amount of protection. Now, I have chosen not to do that. And let me tell you, based on my own choice, I completely understand why other people would make a different choice. I completely understand it, because the personal, professional, and financial loss that I have suffered for not having a tribe is very real. And that's made the hand-wringing after Trump won the election really hard for me to take. You see these people on the progressive left going, oh, gee, maybe shut up racist wasn't an effective tactic. Forget tactic. It wasn't kind. It completely shatters the myth of love trumps hate. Where's the love? I don't see the love anywhere in these political groups. It's who you hate the most. These groups define by what they oppose. There's no love in this equation. So they create these sound like great slogans. Oh, love trumps hate. Yeah, everybody would like to get on board with that. Where is it? Like, seriously, where is it? I don't see it. You know, you can't wrap yourself in the flag of that slogan and then attack people. It is a difficult place to be. And when you're vying for leadership, it is great to have that as an overriding principle, but every so often you have to bust some heads. And unfortunately, Hillary Clinton was hamstrung by her own campaign slogans because it didn't match her own personal history. And it tied her hands behind her back in a knife fight, which is what politics is. Politics are a blood sport. And yes, she was trying to build on what Obama did, but look at where 8 years of Obama has brought us. And again, it's not his fault, but he was an inexperienced candidate when he went in there. And that has an impact. That means that a lot of things happened and he wasn't experienced enough to understand what was actually going on. He overpromised. He didn't get very much done, which is what the Republicans' plan was from the beginning. Deny him any significant policy achievements. And that worked very well for them politically. The problem is it didn't work for the people that they were supposed to be representing. And this is what led to this anti-establishment sentiment that is so strong now. Now, that anti-establishment sentiment was something that benefited Obama as well when he ran against John McCain. John McCain, I believe, is a good man. And I know there are people that spit nickels about him. But I think, obviously, I do not agree with a great many of his stances. But I think John McCain is a good man. And they smeared him. And I think Mitt Romney is a good man. And they smeared him. They took awkward turns of phrase and twisted it into things that had this veneer of evil on them that I don't believe existed. I think they were just awkward phrases. And so the hypocrisy of Brand Obama has come home to roost in an exceptionally unfortunate way. And the hypocrisy of Brand Republican has come home to roost in a very unfortunate way. And the thing is, these people won't suffer. They're all too wealthy and they're too powerful. It's regular people that bear the brunt of this leaders not leading phenomenon. Leaders just consolidating power for power's sake. And that's where you get the rise of these organizations that offer people protection when their government isn't protecting them. And that's small comfort to people who are very concerned about a Trump presidency, I know. But we have to identify the actual extent of the problem before we can begin to offer solutions about that problem. And so now that we've done that, what do? Well, Trump's going to govern as Trump's going to govern. And if his, if his business record is any indication, and he's being true to form, he's pitting people against each other. His government will be one defined by infighting and savage, vicious competition that will have just enough successes to balance out these spectacular and catastrophic high-profile failures that will ensue. That has been his business record. He has no problem spending other people's money. He has no problem losing other people's money. And he has no problem writing those losses off as his own when it's beneficial to him. Now, the bright side is the country can endure 4 years of that. Toronto, Canada's major city, and yes, I said the T for the benefit of those of you who don't live here, but it's Canada's largest city, and we had Rob Ford, and to the outside world, Rob Ford was just this sideshow. To this actual city, he was an impediment to getting work done. And this is the problem with a reality show type personality as a political figure, that everybody is so busy managing him. Everybody is so busy dealing with his latest scandal that the basic, boring, busy work that nobody likes about government but is exceptionally important in government doesn't get done. Building permits got backed up. Any sort of paperwork you needed from the government got exceptionally backed up because people quit. People, ended up on long-term disability from stress. It couldn't function because there was too much upheaval. But we endured. Our current mayor, John Tory, has a big, a big job on his plate, because he's not just dealing with his own mandate. He's trying to fix the backlog from Rob Ford. And it's been a real problem. It has caused real issues for him because he hasn't been able to get done what he wants to get done because he inherited a mess. And full disclosure, I used to work with John. He had the radio slot after ours when I was on talk radio. He is a decent dude. And yes, he's a conservative. And yes, he's a businessman. And because I am able to see people as people and not inherently evil from what boxes they check, I have a much more accurate view of the world than people who get their viewpoints from internet message chambers, message board echo chambers. And there's no substitute for getting out there and having real conversations with real people, because people are not simple. I had lunch with somebody yesterday who was telling me about a very high profile, very wealthy personality who I will not name, but that person is very warm, very giving, very free with their time, very available considering their schedule. You need 3 months notice, but hey, you get it. But they're a climate change denier, among other things. And the people around this person can't understand how this person can be a climate change denier, because people aren't simple. And somehow that idea gives this person comfort. And this is an educated person, a very educated person, a highly intellectual person. but they are a climate change denier. People are not simple. And you won't change anyone's mind by screaming at them and calling names. You will shut them up. You will absolutely eventually shut them up. But you will not change their mind. And those people who were silenced by the regressive left went out and voted Trump. Because when all this stuff came out about the racism of his attitudes towards the Central Park Five, not just the horrible comments he has made about women, but the horrible abuses of power that he himself admitted to and were confirmed by other people when he owned that beauty pageant. All this stuff, when it was brought up in the media, people dismiss not because they think that that sort of behavior is right, but because they've been convinced that they're no better. Because they've been called racist, they've been called sexist, they've been called homophobic, they've been called all these names that probably don't apply to them. They may need some more information on certain things, but that does not mean they have hate in their hearts. I have found that most people, when you actually show them the impacts of certain things, without blame, without saying you're a bad person because of this, I just want to show you what this does. Most people, when you can sit down and have a conversation and allow them to ask questions, they care and they want to do better. But people need to know that they have the potential to be rewarded for doing better, instead of constantly being told not good enough. And I think a lot of people are probably nodding, and I know I feel this. I know that I feel like no opinion I hold, no argument I make, no action I do, no series I produce will ever be good enough to satisfy. I see the people who do well. And why do they do well? Because millions of people watch them to hate on them. And I fight the urge to do that every time I sit down to do a video, because there's money in it. There's a lot of money in it. What stops me is it doesn't help anybody. And part of the reason I do this stuff, actually a huge part of the reason I do this stuff, because it's not, like I said, it's not for praise. It's not for, oh, you're so awesome, because that's not the reality of media. It's not the reality of YouTube. Like, people got to understand, any celebrity, when you see them out there and you see them cheer, the fans cheering for them and all these people loving them and all that stuff, that is a minority of their time. The majority of their time is spent around executives and hangers-on that are looking for reasons to run them down. And that's the part you don't see. And so people have to, either people are futilely chasing acceptance and support and reassurance that is never going to come, or there's a larger reason for doing something in the media. And for me, it's to go out and listen to people and then come here like I'm doing right now and communicate the things that other people may not be able to. And that alone helps people. It's a small group now, but I believe in it. I think that it isn't about love trumps hate. Let's be real. Lady Gaga doesn't love us, right? Beyonce doesn't love us. They don't know us. But understanding can trump hate, and we can do that for each other. So hopefully this video will get up on time. Sorry, there's no bells and whistles on it. I just spitballed it because I wanted to get the content up. But tomorrow's content, I've started a new experiment, will be Patreon exclusive. And I will tell you more about why on Feedback Friday. See you guys on Friday. See Patreons tomorrow.